Hello there and welcome. My name's Fiona from Weekly Sewing Bee, and I am going to make something that I've been meaning to make for myself. All it is a little footrest. I'm sure I'm not the only one that suffers. Suffers is quite a strong word really, isn't it? If I'm sewing for a long amount of time, I find it quite uncomfortable to have my foot on the floor and then the sort of angle that I'm at. Now I have a selection of pedals as well, and some of the pedals, the cable is on the left and some of it's on the right, so it does make my footrest idea a bit difficult. Let's get rid of them. Okay, so I've got a strip of fabric. Now I would say that this is sort of 2 foot long, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a base plate to sew on some tubes of fabric that will just support my foot slightly so it's not quite as such a strong angle. So I've cut it up, I've got the base plate and then I've got the tube, and the machine's all set up, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this in half in a moment so I can sew round all of it. And it can be quite roughly sewn as well, you know, because we're turning it inside out, and it is just for my own use. Come on machine, you can do it. So I'm just checking I'm not coming off actually. I might be. Very badly cut. Okay, so that's sewn all the way round, and I did come off. You see how badly I cut things? And they do say it's in the cutting, don't they? And what I'm going to do with this piece is I'm going to sew round, but I'm going to leave a piece to turn it inside out. So you can see how simple this is. Okay, I'm not going to put any stuffing in the base plate because I don't think it needs it. It will just make the situation worse. Although, you know, I'm tempted with aesthetically to put a bit of wadding in there, maybe doing a bit of trimming, but it isn't necessary. It just means that you've got to make the tubes higher. So turn this inside out. Not a big thing at all, is it? And then there we are, and I can pluck that little corner bit in. So that's all done, and the more I can do now, the easier it'll be. In fact, I could even use my knitting needles to push these corners out. So lovely. And then I'm going to sew along the top, but this is going to be covered, so I don't mind that it's not particularly tidy. So now this is the rectangle tube, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to cut this at an angle of 45 degrees. Now I'm doing that so that when it's sewn up again we can have it like that, yeah? And then I have my stuffing here. Oh, I just whacked the tripod then. And I need to turn these inside out as well. Now stuffing wise, I must admit, I've been having a look out for the polystyrene that you get round TVs and stuff, and I was going to make one out of that. If I didn't want it, I know I'd have loads. I really would, wouldn't I? It would be you know, filling up my bins and everything, but I've given up waiting now, so I'm just going to use soft toy stuffing. Now, it does make it more tricky to do it this way. I tend to fight the sewing machine, but I think it's the only way around. So, if I just pinch in there and pull it tight again, and then I can sew up this seam. And of course I'm going to be doing the same with the other one. So, I'm going to use the foot of the machine just as a third hand here, and then I'm going to just sew it once I'm happy. And it is a bit of a war with the machine when you're doing something like this, because it kind of pushes it out of the way, but once it's got going, it's great. Lovely, so that's that done. I'll leave it there, might as well, good a place as any, and I'll just do the other one. So you can see how simple this is, and I'm sure it will really help just to support my foot and then make life that much more pleasurable, because it is just I suppose it's cramp, isn't it, really? There we go. A bit more. I don't need to do too much for the sides. I did want to do a padding for the sides, just because as all my sewing feet are different size, I feel that if I do one for the side as well, then it will help secure it in place. Because if I just had one foot, one pedal, then what I would do is make a pattern around it. But because life's not like that, I have an overlocker because I'm very lucky. Yeah. So what I'm going to do now is I deliberately sewed them off just to make life easier, but I could have done it all in one go. And now I'm going to sew all three pieces together. And I'm not going to sew the far end because my cables are not all on the same size on all the feet. Now, yes, I'm going to sew through probably 6 layers of fabric, but most of this is fluff, so I'm not too worried. The only problem that I might have is if I have so much underneath that it causes my foot to come up at the back there, and then that would release the tension in the bobbin. So as long as I can trick the machine into keeping the foot down, it should be fine. Let's take my needle up. And I chose to use sheeting as well. You could use anything actually. It doesn't need to be anything in particular. Let's get these feet pedal up here. So, I do have another one tucked away somewhere. So what I'm going to do is when I start sewing, I can put them like that, and then I'll have my foot on this little pressure plate. So it just makes life 100% easier and more comfortable for myself. The wire can go either side. I must admit, if I'm doing a long sew, I usually sew with my foot at the back here, and then it's a bit easier for me. Don't know why. I think it's just a bad habit, and then I've got that one, and it will work just as well with any of them. So yes, I don't know, is it a foot comforter? I think it might be. Thank you ever so much for watching. Please like, share and subscribe.